Eastern Front. Then, in December, Hitler's worst fear becomes a reality. America joins the war.
Hitler knew this was coming, and he knows it's very bad news. Not only is he heavily engaged in Russia to the east, he now knows that Britain has got a very strong ally to the west in the form of the USA.
Now, the western seaboard of the Nazi Empire looks weak and vulnerable. For the first time, Hitler's attention turns to defense.
And so he puts out his famous Directive 40, which is basically rattling the cage and saying, enough, we need to get our act together. And in a series of bullet points, he states in no uncertain terms what is expected of his fighting forces and of his engineering organizations.
The 20 gun positions built around Calais to attack Britain now become part of a defensive Atlantic wall that will stretch all the way from Spain to Norway. For Germans back in Berlin, unaware that the war is going badly, these fortifications are portrayed as a triumph. Newsreels proudly boast of their awesome firepower. And no one is following progress more avidly than 16-year-old Franz Gockel.
In kürzester Zeit ist alles gefechtsbereit.
I'd seen so much reported about the wall in the newsreel that I was sure we'd be invincible.
Zeigt Deutschland im 4 Jahren des Krieges die gigantische Stärke seiner Abwehrkraft. Der deutsche Soldat.
These pictures are powerful propaganda. But what he doesn't know is that he will soon see the Atlantic Wall for himself. And on D-Day, his life will come to depend on it. At 3,000 miles long, the Nazis aim to build a defensive line, nearly twice the length of America's east coast. And they plan to make the structure able to withstand any Allied attack. But in spring 1942, the wall, the brainchild of Hitler, is nothing more than a handful of gun positions.
The Atlantic Wall is very much a product of German propaganda and should give confidence to the Germans that they are prepared to defeat the Allies. In reality, it was only a string of pearls.
Hitler knows an Allied attack will come, but the question is, where? There are defensive holes all along the western seaboard. Across the Channel, British Prime Minister Winston Churchill wants to find these weak points. Patrick Berry is a former British Army infantry captain and expert in military strategy.
How does Churchill keep the morale of the nation high and keep the initiative, keep the Nazis guessing where they're going to land? He doesn't have many resources, he doesn't have many troops. The one thing he can do is some strategic raiding.
Churchill orders a series of commando raids to probe the Atlantic Wall. They want to destroy Nazi bases and find out where they could land an invasion force. So they target radar stations and harbors.
They picked the port of Saint-Nazaire, which has got one of the largest dry docks on Western Atlantic approaches. The idea here is to get a battleship disguised as a German battleship, pack it full of commandos and explosives, and then ram it into the dry dock at night.
This daring raid is a great success. The dock is out of action for the rest of the war. But the capture and execution of hundreds of Allied troops from Atlantic Wall raids has taught Churchill a valuable lesson.
The Allies drew the conclusion, in future we mustn't land anymore at harbors because they are too strongly fortified. The Germans drew the completely opposite conclusion out of that and thought, well, if the Allies come again, they will try it again at a harbor. So what did they do? They fortified particularly their harbors.
Hitler's decision not to invade Britain is returning to haunt him. He knows the commando raids are just the beginning. He becomes fixated with fortifying harbors, even as far north as Norway. Massive amounts of men and resources are sent to defend the Norwegian coast, all the way to the Arctic.
Norway was very important initially because of its location. There's a lot of iron ore coming out of Sweden, and it's taken aboard ship in Norwegian ports.
Iron ore is vital to the German war effort, providing the steel in Hitler's bombs, tanks, and bunkers. The Norwegian supply line must be defended, so the German engineers remove a 900-ton naval gun from its battleship and move it to Åland to protect the port of Trondheim. Astonishingly, it still survives to this day.
Essentially, this is a ship built on land, built inside this mountain. A deep shaft, 5 levels deep, was cut into the mountain and was filled up with concrete, and the turret was placed inside that shaft.
The occupying German forces in Norway use prisoners of war to dig a 36-foot deep hole through the solid rock. It has to be lined with concrete before the turret can be rebuilt inside.
The guns were put in parts. 80 trainloads of parts went to Trondheim, and from Trondheim onto boats up to the island. The 3 guns are the only thing you can see on the outside, but the actual bunker is inside this mountain. When you look around it's like solid engineering everywhere. It's all separate pieces working together to make this machine going like a monster, really. The black floor we see here is the actual tower from the ship. This part is really the bunker, the shaft into the mountain. This part will stand still. So this is concrete, and this is a 5-floor deep shaft from a naval ship.
Just as when it was on a ship, the massive gun needs to rotate.
The whole turret is resting on these ball bearings all around us. Oh, really very heavy, really very heavy. I guess about 40-50 kilos. And they're all around, resting in the rail around the shaft.
138 steel balls carry the weight of the 900-ton gun and allow it to turn smoothly. The shell and propellant are stored 5 levels below the gun.
We got 3 different kinds of ammunition here. We got high explosive shells, armor piercing shells, and even shells with time fuse.
To maneuver these 660-pound shells, the Nazi engineers devise an ingenious hydraulic lift system.
The shells will come right out of the walls, the ammunition rooms, would slide over here, wall on to this table, wall on further on this one, and when it finally reaches up here, you could reverse the shell up to the lift. Of course, normally it would be hydraulically operated.
The ammunition is lifted 5 stories up to barrel level, ready to be fired.
The effective range of these guns was about 37 kilometers, and that's as far as the eye can see. From the top from Norway all the way down to the south of France, you can find the same kind of bunkers. So it's not just concrete blocks, it's massive ships on land.
Alongside the heavily defended batteries at the ports of Mobik, Cherbourg, Brest, and the island of Jersey, a formidable display of defense is taking shape.